Hi everyone, welcome to the Coaching Accelerator program. We have for you a series of videos that you'll be keenly interested in because the work we do here is not just about coaching, but it's beyond that. We bring in a very unique blend of inner work and coaching that helps the person go deep and also create transformative results, right? So to begin, great coaching actually does not start with tools. It actually starts with who you are as a coach, right? Because who you are determines the outcome that you're going to bring to the table. And with that, then that's where you can create safety with the client. That's where you build relationships. And with that being set up as a second level of the circle, that's where we go into transformation work and who you are being. That beingness, that presence that you hold is what's going to shift the client even without you saying or asking a lot of questions. So we're going to approach the topics that we're going to share today in 3 different levels. The first one is on the coach self, right? That is around who you are as a coach, how you are resourced, regulated, and aligned so that you can bring your full self to the table. And the development focus for you here is whether you as a coach can self-manage as you facilitate the coaching conversation. The topics covered, you will hear a little bit more in a while. Then we move on to the middle circle. The middle circle is really about how you as a coach create conditions for trust so that you can go deep with the client. And at the same time, it creates that psychological safety that makes them feel that, they can also bring their full self in to share with you. And this is where coaching becomes relational. It's not just a transactional session, right? And so the development focus for you here as the coach is whether you can hold the relationship without trying to rescue, control, or avoid things that you don't want to see or talk about with the client. Okay? And then we come to the third concentric circle. This outer circle is all about transformation and being. What do I mean by that? This is where coaching moves beyond just coaching goals, which are very, again, transactional in essence. And we want to move that into identity, meaning, and consciousness. That is where most people are moving to in terms of value at work as a coach to the client. And this is also where we are progressing towards what is Master Certified Coach level work. So this is where you get a sneak peek into how the essence of MCC feels and looks like. So that's the 3 circles, but I also want to say that it's beyond this. These 3 circles actually are a developmental spiral. What do I mean by that? So the coach self, when you are centered in your coach self, you basically are bringing that stability and integrity as a coach into the session. And the safety and relationship is where you build depth and trust with the client. And the last part is transformation and being is where you bring lasting change to the table, right? For the time that you are spending with the client, you definitely want to make them feel like, you've made that impact and they feel like they have really moved the needle from just being in that session with you. So when you go through transformation on your own, on yourself or with the client, what that brings is new edges in the coach self. Meaning, as you go into your own transformation, your coach self also expands. And in that expansion, then it means that you go through deeper personal mastery, which also allows for greater relational capacity. So we're going to explore the relationship between all this as we go through the sharing and videos that you'll find beneficial in the way that you conduct yourself as a coach. Right, so without further ado, we are going to go into the first video, which is on the inner architecture of a coach. And I have here with me our Master Certified Coach, Ming Kwang. He will be sharing more and bringing that expertise of inner work into how this shapes your inner architecture as a coach. So in this inner work, in this inner architecture of a coach, what we are really touching on is how do you really embody a coaching mindset and how do you build that trust and safety for yourself so that it also creates the same for the client. And what do I mean by that? If we talk about the quality of your coaching, it's really shaped by the architecture of your inner world. Right? Your beliefs, your identities, your values, your narratives, your patterns shape how you show up as a coach. It's just a question of how aware you are about it. And it also affects how you conduct yourself as a coach in a session and also how the sessions turn out as an outcome. Right? So in this video, we want to tackle how to work with your inner system in all the beliefs, narratives, and patterns, etc. that you actually run. Right? So that you can show up in a clean and grounded way. And so you can be fully present in a session with a client and bring the most out of that session, right? So then, of course, when we talk about inner world, most people will go, what is inner world? It's not something that even as a coach at the ACC level that they would really touch on. I would say that this is something we go deeper into if you're looking at transformation as something that you really want to impact at a deeper level. So Ming, the first question for you really is, what really is the inner world of the coach or
Right.
of an individual?
Right. So there's a saying that our external reality is a manifestation and a reflection of what is inside of us. The inner world itself is literally the psyche itself. In the olden days, they would say that it governs your conscious behaviors, your subconscious and your unconscious behaviors. But then, these days, too many people have justified their actions by saying that they didn't know about it or they're not conscious of it. So if I were to point my finger at a person, did I do that? Whether I did it consciously or not? Yes, I did that. So as a reality, what does that mean? It means things did happen. So how about let's use a different approach. Instead of marginalizing what we know and what we don't, how about let's use a different term to describe the conscious and the unconscious process? What if we talk about the primary process and the secondary process? So when we speak about primary process, we're talking about things that we identify ourselves with. Whereas, when it comes to secondary processes, we are speaking about things that we dissociate ourselves from. Okay? And of course, the things that you dissociate yourself from, you don't identify with it. So what actually happens? On the external reality, your environment keeps playing out. For example, you keep attracting the same kind of people over and over again. You keep attracting similar patterns, patterns that you haven't really worked through. There's lack of awareness on your end. So this is important to actually understand because it gives you a lot of context when you approach coaching yourself. So of course, when we speak about this particular competency, so we're looking to competency number 2. How do we embody a more coaching mindset? And competency number 4, how do we cultivate trust and safety? How do we have greater self-awareness and emotional regulation? How do we respect our clients' identity and autonomy itself? And of course, in the MCC emphasis, how do we coach becomes an instrument for their higher awareness and higher breakthrough itself? How do we increase the awareness of the internal system, the parts, and also the biasness in real time? How do we get people connected to their dreaming and their essence, in short?
So when you spoke about the primary and secondary process,
Yeah.
right? If we were to bring that to life, how does it look like?
Right. So, for example, if let's say I identify myself as a coach, then everywhere you go, that becomes your walking stick. So you identify yourself as a coach. But then what you might not be conscious of is the way, let's say, if somebody have a history in their family, where they were abused or they were brought up in a very angsty environment itself, and the person doesn't identify themselves as somebody who is angry. So what actually plays out in the secondary environment is that, you will start saying, hey, how come the people around me are always angry? It's kind of strange, right? Of course, you kind of realize that, hey, you do notice it's only happening around you. So the inner cause must be you, since our external reality is a function of our internal world itself. So what does that mean? It means that the things that we dissociate and cut off ourselves from, it plays out as a secondary figure in our quantum field.
So like for instance, in today's world, there are a lot of strong women, right? So that is their primary figure, primary process. And the secondary would be of them not wanting to, they would not like people who are weak and vulnerable.
Or that might be true. Or they might keep creating situation in life where people undermine their power or marginalize them. Because making them feel less than, making them feel weaker, that's also another possibility too. So in short, whatever we don't associate ourselves with, it becomes secondary. And the holistic work itself is really how do we become whole and integrated? How do we integrate these different parts of ourselves that we have unresolved wounds from? That was resultant from our unresolved wounds. So that's how trauma really happens. Trauma happens in 2 ways. Either there is an force, something that's too much, for a person to handle, right? And the psyche actually starts breaking down. Or when something was meant to happen but it didn't happen, an absence, that also results in the trauma as well.
So in terms of the psyche, and then this whole primary and secondary process we are talking about.
Yeah.
How do they relate together? Because we're saying that the psyche is like part of the inner world.
The inner world constitute all of this above, including the things that you cut away from, including the things that you block out from. Just because you block it out doesn't mean that it's not inside. And it must be operating inside such that it's manifesting as a secondary figure. So some people call it a blind spot. Some people also call it an insistence of not seeing what you're resisting.
So if we apply that to a coach working on a client, how might that then possibly show up?
So I think in a coaching session, it's always very important to pay attention to what they are saying, but more importantly, paying attention to what they are not saying. And sometimes people give out feedbacks and signals all the time. For example, a person might be folding arms and say, I'm not angry. And clearly you can tell that they're really angry. But in their world, they don't think they're angry. I will be paying attention to all these mixed signals, double signals, and also triple signals itself. To understand, what is really happening at the background and the undercurrent. And also to give a little bit perspective, how much what they're really saying is the truth. Because most people will believe that whatever they tell other people is the truth. Except that we are not. Most of us are lying all the time, and most of us, we are lying to ourselves all the time. And that's why we're not getting the breakthroughs we need. So the problem, the challenge when it comes for coaches is that, when you coach a client itself, you're really coaching on what they bring to the table itself. Which means that whatever you're coaching on, you're coaching at the level of consciousness that they're at. If they present to you a situation itself, that is what they can understand and grasp in their level of consciousness. But that usually is the symptom. That's not the root cause of it. And of course, in coaching, so we don't touch on childhood trauma or that, but we need to have certain awareness that it exists such that we don't even touch on it in the first place.
Correct. And I think to add on to that, this whole inner architecture of a person, be a coach or a coachee, they would play out and interact with each other.
Yeah.
Right. So while you pay attention to your client's own inner architecture, the trauma that they face that might come up in the sessions to impact the way it is run, there's also this paying attention to yourself, because when you can't manage yourself, how it tends to spill over into your sessions is this whole thing around projecting onto the client. For instance, you yourself, you're having a relational issue with your own partner.
Yep.
And then you have a client who comes in talking about their own relational issues, and you will start making assumptions about what's happening there, and that detracts you from actually listening in and working with the client based on where they're at. Instead, you're running your own thing and trying to coach them based on where you're at.
That's right. And usually that leads to disasters.
Yep.
And not only will the coaching breakthrough not be achieved, it becomes a session for trauma bonding, isn't it? Because of the relatability that they have certain issues out, and we need to be very clear and grounded. And that's why we always need to realize that, hey, while we are a work in progress, when we go into a coaching session, we need to really create segregations, clarity, boundaries, such that the line is clean so that there's no spillage. Now, of course, whatever that comes in the field, obviously, I'm not asking you to repress your issue. You carry those issues with you in your field. So even without you knowing yourself, could it be possible that the client that you're coaching, the problem that you are working through with them is the exact same problem that you might be facing in your life? Having that level of awareness actually is important, because it gives you a feedback on how to navigate, how to clear yourself, how to set boundaries.
Okay, and how would you say is the best way to manage when you know that you're at some level projecting?
Well, of course, the first thing you're going to do is, you're going to be very conscious of your own personal content, your personal history, in order to first not even, spill it, to the participants itself or to the client itself. That's the first thing first. The second thing is, really, you realize that, hey, I have this issue now. How do I work on it? Now, I may need to go to a therapist to work on it. I may need to go to a peak performance coach to work on it. I may need to go to an inner work teacher to work on it, or process work teacher to work on it. Depends. There's so many methods out there. But the moment you know that you have an issue to work on, you must work on the issue. Because as long as you think that you can get away with it, I can work on it maybe say 2 months later, 3 months later, then you still do not understand that there's a part of you that's not really owning your issue. Come on, if something is important enough, we'll do it anyway. So why do we not do it? Because we prioritize and value something else more than what we face. But here comes the tricky thing. Whatever you don't try to work on now, since working on yourself should be a daily process, not when I feel like working on it, then I work on it, or when I have issues, then I work on it. I think we really want to change the mentality in terms of how we approach personal mastery and inner work itself. So it's the same thing as coaching. If you keep working on the wrong coaching techniques itself, sure, you'll get better at doing the wrong thing. But if you practice the right thing and you do it right, you're going to find yourself being able to maneuver things. You'll find yourself more effective, more efficient in the level you coach.
So in short, actually, when it comes to like the projections that you tend to bring into a session that's going to end up blending with the client, when you speak about trauma bonding between the coach and the coachee, what do you see is the issue or the shortfall if they were to do that in a session?
Well, for the next 1 hour, you end up talking about both your issues. You'll find yourself getting closer, but you'll realize that none of the endpoint was actually met. You stop listening. You stop paying attention to what the other person is really saying. And it's just not professional, isn't it? Because the client clearly paid you to do a piece of work on themselves and a piece of their life. But you brought in your personal shit into the space itself. So how is this ethical? So we're going to go back to the whole ethics and the frameworks around coaching regulation itself. Why there's such a competencies markers that we need to make sure is emphasized.
Yep. So competency 1 is around upholding the ethical conduct as a coach, right? So for you to forward your client most, I mean, there are aspects of like how we ascertain whether the client is suitable for coaching. But at the same time, there's also the how do you put yourself in a position as a coach where you're actually separating your issues and theirs so that you're really working on them and you're not conflating the issues together.
That's right. And of course, as a coach yourself, you're not going to just jump into whatever they present to you. You want to take some time to explore and to examine why does this even matter to them, and to find out what's the real issue underlying the symptoms as well. And I think most of us, we jump too quickly. We hear a symptom that we can relate to, we straight away think that the person is in the same shoes as us. Clearly we are not, because we are fundamentally all different human beings.
Yep.
There's this story around the elephant and 6 blind men. Okay, so once upon a time there was 6 blind men. Being blind from birth, they have never seen an elephant before. So one day they asked to be brought to one so that they can see the elephant for themselves. Right. So the first blind man went up to the elephant itself, touches the ears of the elephant, and he goes, the elephant feels like a fan. Now the second man, he touched the tusk of the elephant itself, and it feels so smooth, so sharp. The elephant must be a sphere. Third man went to the back of the elephant, touches the swinging tail, and goes, the elephant feels like a rope. Fourth man hugged the elephant leg, and he goes, the elephant feels like a tree trunk. And then there's the fifth man and the sixth man. You know how the story goes. Now, would you say that they are right or were they wrong? Now, of course, we're going to say that they are right in their own way, right?
Yes.
Because only because that's all that they can perceive in their reality. But in actuality, none of what they describe is the elephant. The elephant is not a fan. The elephant is not a sphere. The elephant is not a swinging rope. The elephant is neither a tree trunk. The elephant is an elephant. Sometimes we think we see the world for what the world is. The truth is we don't. We see the world for who we are and what we are. We carry these biased lenses and filters as we operate in the world itself. And that's why we get confused. We start taking on things that's not really us. We start jumping into roles and we start assuming that role is who we are, for the lack of value and self-worth that a person might feel. And we lack the clarity and the awareness to be able to separate ourselves from all these different roles itself. And here comes the problem itself. If we are not seeing the world for who the world is and what the world is, don't you think the misunderstanding is constantly happening every time? Don't you think conflicts and wars are happening every moment?
Yep.
So how do we deal with tension? How do we deal with hotspot? How do we deal with a cold spot when the client stops responding? So bringing back to coaching itself, all these meta skills being able to deal with nuances and subtleties is a whole different art itself. And I feel like this is something that we want to really empower and enhance and to train our students to be able to have all these equipments and tools in their toolbox, so that in the case itself, they know how to disrupt the pattern. They know how to bring clarity and awareness to the client itself, such that the client get to the place where they really need to be.
So first, what you need to do is to be able to separate what's your shit and their shit.
That's right.
Right,
But
because without that, you can't even
that's
work
right.
on them.
Which means you're going to work on your shit in the first place.
Yes.
The moment you think that you don't have to work on your shit for a single day, you might have fallen off from your own path. Because sure, we are always busy. We'll always make reasons why we shouldn't do something. But if something truly matters, we'll put it as priority anyway.
Yeah, correct. So it's not very different from other professions where, a counselor will have a case supervisor, or like a coach will have a coach, or a teacher will have a teacher. We all need somebody to keep us in check in
That's
terms
right.
of how we're being and whether we're showing up in a pure way that really forwards the client. Because sometimes when we're in it and things get conflated, we might fail to see that there's actually that degree of conflation that doesn't allow that forwarding to happen.
Exactly. So we kind of limit ourselves in the box, right? Then the kind of questions that comes out is also limited. It lacks imagination. It lacks exploration itself. It lacks that whole fluidity itself. That I think if we have more fluidity, instead of thinking that we have to bring a client to A to B, we start realizing that we have a whole playground to play with. And I think that can allow the client to seek deeper perspective and understanding of who they are. Where do they come from? What do they do? And where do they go next?
Yep.
And that might help them to get to the place where they originally came to look for you in the first place. I mean, they pay you because they want results.
Correct. And so when you actually do have somebody working on you as you work on others, what's going to happen is that instead of standing in your own perspective and looking at the client through your own lenses, it gives you the ability to actually step into their positions, look at what they are really facing, and to work with them with greater sensitivity, and therefore the impact really flows in a way that, makes both your time worthwhile. Right, so projections on clients is one way that spillover happens when you don't manage your inner world. The other way, it's in terms of how you end up not listening to the client and their needs, right? So signs of how you're not listening, you could be running inner narratives as the client is talking, and that is how you lose presence. You lose presence when you stop being there with the coachee and you miss out what the client is actually trying to communicate. So what you want to start asking is, what makes you tell those narratives in your head as you are listening to the coachee? Why can't you be fully there with them?
Right. So most people is not even aware that they're running a narrative. Right, that little voice in their head itself. But you see, awareness is like the observer watching through a lens itself of whatever that's happening. It is impartial, it is neutral, it doesn't make any judgment. So the moment your mind starts running conversation like a monkey mind, you're not there anymore. And sometimes, that is necessary in a coaching session because, it might lead to a more freestyle where, we're exploring certain body work itself in a coaching session itself. Maybe. There are times itself, when we are not aware of whether this is my stuff or the person's stuff, it becomes very conflicted. No, we're still talking in duality. Now, the truth is this. When two people of two different fields come together, there must be a reaction. Right? There must always be a reaction, no matter what kind of charges they come in, whether it's a positive charge or negative charge. Two different people come together, there will always be a chemical reaction. So, one way to look at this itself is, don't be afraid to catch yourself drifting off in a coaching session itself. And sometimes that drifting off is part of that whole process to find out where the client is really drifting into.
It's almost like tuning in to
That's
the
right.
client.
And I think too many times we are too quick to make judgment, to make ourselves wrong, or to say that, hey, this is not going anywhere. But even if something is not going anywhere, it's going somewhere.
Okay.
Which is a greater paradox.
So it's almost like, for instance, in a coaching session when you're coaching the client and somehow the conversation goes in circles. That is the process itself.
And now, as a coach or as a facilitator, I'm very curious. Why does it go in circle? Why is it circling? Why is it really circling? Now, of course, I could disrupt the circling or I could follow them. But then not being entrenched in a story, but having that awareness to see, hey, where is this leading to? Why are they circling the narrative itself? And if I were to use my body to feel that circling, how does it feel? Now, all these are very meta skills that we pick it up. And of course, we can bring to the coachy, awareness itself. But sometimes, even if you bring it up to them, they might not catch it because they're so deep into it. So as a coach itself, I want to have the tools, as many tools as possible to use at the appropriate time to help them to get the breakthrough that they need.
Yep.
Right? And sometimes about following that circling or where are they circling in their life.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I haven't experienced somebody like that before. So I was coaching this person in a demonstration and this person was talking in a circle, and it was just going in circles and it wasn't making sense.
Right.
And then at some point I really stopped listening because I'm like, it's not something that can be processed when it's going this way, right? But instead I started looking at the symptoms, other signals that the client's giving out. And I saw that, she's just sitting across me, but her chair is also swiveling in a circle.
Right.
Right. And that was a very obvious symptom. And I just said, this conversation is going in circles and you are also going in a circle physically. So what's really happening? And the moment we went into that, she was able to step out, stop being in that circle and start talking about where is she going in circles in her life.
So maybe the role of the coach itself is to facilitate the awareness of what is happening in the present time of the person's world and also the inner world that's happening in the present time. Because time is not linear in the psyche itself. We can spend time thinking about stuff, but you must realize time is still a external consensus reality that we have. But, we dream of things and dreaming follows a different timeline.
Say more.
So, we don't really realize that we're entrenched in a particular direction and story and narrative. That we don't realize that we're operating based on habits, familiarity, patterns. To disrupt a pattern itself, we must first realize that we are in a pattern. So after we realize we are in a pattern, then what? We have the awareness, we have the ability to take a pause. Wait a minute, what's going on? Why am I doing this? Why is my hand moving this way when I'm talking? Why do I feel angry? Why do I feel this whole fiery feeling as I'm talking about, this present time issue that I'm facing, with my colleague itself? And why is there this whole facial expression of contempt and disgust, when I talk about that? And if a client have that level of awareness in a coaching session itself, the coaching itself is going to be a very sophisticated one. Alright? So, really bring back to the context of what we were talking about itself is this. Don't be too quick to jump into the symptoms. Symptoms are everywhere. But we need to have the accuracy and the precision to diagnose the root issue. And don't be in a hurry or worry state or rush to get to the client to point B.
Yep.
Because you're going to miss out so many other things that they're really trying to tell you. And most of the time, people are telling you things, but then they really can't say it. So they have to find all different sorts of ways as an outlet of expression, right? Even body movement.
Yep. So, if we bring that then back to how you conduct a coaching session, right, it should be clear by now, if you already have some experience as a coach, that when a client comes to you with an issue, that issue is never the issue. It's a symptom that they're sharing because that's what they can see. And there's something deeper that's driving this symptom that they have probably no awareness yet. Because most of the time when issues happen, it's more top of mind. It is going in, swirling in their minds, and it's something that they want to put out here to start talking about it. And as they talk about it, then that's where there are opportunities to unravel that and go deeper into what could possibly be the issue. So the presenting problem that they bring in is always different from what really is the issue that they end up having to work on in order to find that kind of breakthrough. And that's what you as a PCC or MCC coach want to endeavor towards, so that you really make the needle move for the person.
Well, so as a coach yourself, I want to be very mindful and present to what is happening within me itself. As if my client is really talking, I'm not just tracking it mentally what they're talking, I'm also paying attention to my feelings that's coming out from what they just shared. I'm also paying attention to my body feedback, my body signal itself. What happens to the client? What happens to my body when the client suddenly goes silent, quiet? And what happens, when they start talking about things, in a very passionate, enthusiastic, or even agitated way? I want to pay attention to all these nuances, that's happening within me. How come it's moving this way? How come one polarity is moving this way? How come the other is moving that way itself? So, presence, goes beyond just being present itself. It is also about how we regulate ourselves, how we are paying attention to everything that's happening in our environment, our secondary field, our primary field that's happening inside, our different channels, for example, like the movement, the sight, the hearing, the smell, the taste, the proprioceptive, the word channel, the relationship channel, and so forth. We want to pay attention to the different aspects of ourselves. Why do we feel this way? And of course, how do we use coaching? How do we really steer the client to the direction that they need? I think we have to let go of this belief that there's only one path.
Yep. There are many paths to bring a client to a certain outcome that they
Right.
want.
There are many paths, many roads to roam. So if we don't get so caught up about bringing a person to point A to point B, I guess this is where we start exiting out from a PCC, transition out from a typical PCC level of coaching and enter into a MCC coaching itself, where it's no longer just about doing, but it's about how do we be in the space, how do we present, how do we presence the present.
Yeah. Such that the presence helps the client presence and see things that they probably normally would not on their own.
Right.
Yeah. So, when you are able to be present or bring that presence in that allows the client also to see themselves in their own true light, you are going to stop diagnosing. Because a lot of the reason why a lot of coaches find it challenging to coach at the PCC or MCC level is because when we talk about listening, right, you may think that you are listening, but what are you listening for? Are you listening to diagnose the client, to ask the next question, or are you there to be with them, and because you are being there with them, what you need to ask just surfaces out on its own? There's no need for you to go and diagnose or process it.
Right. Some of the coaches, younger coaches, newer coaches, they will be listening for a method, for an opening, to use a certain framework of coaching that they're used to.
Yeah. Or sometimes they like to use comfortable questions like on a scale of 1 to 10, where is this?
Where is this going? Where is point B? Where is point A? Nothing wrong with that, but those are very amateur.
Amateur, yes.
Right. That's a way to teach people that. But what we're really offering and teaching people is how do we go beyond that? How do we pay attention to the nuances, the fluidity? If you put somebody in a box itself, not only would they not get a breakthrough, their breakthroughs are really limited.
Yep.
By the box size that you put them in.
Correct. So how do you see the whole person
right.
as is, right?
How do we have that whole vastness, that freedom, in coaching itself, but you're still holding them accountable to the edges, holding them accountable to their commitments itself, holding them accountable and making a stand for who they can become.
For the purposes of the audience, could you share a little bit more about what edges are?
Edges are literally the familiar line where things become familiar, things follows a certain pattern, things that are within our comfort zone itself. So a lot of times we find it hard to jump down the cliff. Okay, jump down the cliff, down the rabbit hole, and what's the fear that most people have? Fear of the unknown. So when we ask somebody to take a jump, to take a risk in their life, oftentimes they're scared because it represents certain psychological death for them. So when I use an edge, I'm also describing the comfort zone and the familiarity that people tend to put themselves into to continue moving in the wheel.
So when they hit an edge, when they're supposed to jump, they will pull themselves back
That's
and
right.
go back to that
That's
same
right.
familiar cycle.
That's right. And we can pick that up from the way the body signal, from the way their feedback, from the way their energetic starts shifting, from the way they say certain things repeatedly. For example, in a coaching session, blah, 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 they're talking, energy was going smoothly like a wave. And then suddenly there was a disrupted cut and they just say they can't do it. And then you know that the energy, something is not quite right. How come they suddenly just shift? And when they say they can't do it, they're insisting that they can't do it. It's not a true acknowledgement of I can't do that. I need to work through this because it come from somewhere in my past. But they are just repeatedly saying the same thing. I can't do it. I can't get past it. I don't think I can do it. And it just not going anywhere. So a coach might feel stuck around that.
Yes.
So this is where, we're going to take a step back and to rewind a little bit to find out what the client was really talking about, the he and edge. And oftentimes it's related to something painful or traumatic in their history. And like I say, trauma doesn't have to be something that's impactful. Sometimes it's the lack and the absence of something that creates a trauma itself. And since in coaching, so we don't touch on therapy work, we have to be very mindful not to cross the line. But yet at the same time, are there ways that we can encourage a client to explore what this edge is about? That could be a coaching session.
Yes. The exploration of it does not really go into the past, but it's more of present time. What is it that's coming up for them?
That's right.
That made them suddenly flip.
That's right.
So understanding what that flip is about is important because most people don't go into that. They see the client, flip and then they freak out and then, the coach just steps back.
I won't even use the word flip because, we think that we understand the client. So we assume that they flip because we assume that we understood them. The truth is we don't. No matter whether they are our friends or we have a long relationship history with, we don't really know them until they show you what they are.
Yep.
So you're going to be gentle and delicate about it, but we also need to hold them firmly. Because when a person hit the edge, what most coaches do is they don't do anything. They don't ask the question. They don't invite the client to explore this. And I think a very good MCC and PCC high quality, kind of standards is really about catching all these subtle moments that happens in the moment. Because every moment is a second chance to turn things all around.
Yep. So actually, just a couple of days, I was coaching a client, and she had this situation at work where she acted in a way that she never wanted to experience again.
Okay.
So in short, she's a senior leader. She was meant to support the business leader in terms of giving that consultation or advice to move the hiring or promotions forward. And she challenged and then she reacted. She became emotional and things kind of went out of control. But this was over a very minor role, which later on when she reflected on it, she's like, why did I even go there? And like it made me look so bad being so emotional. But then there were also... But we ended up having to help her process it because the thing that she started off telling me is, I don't ever want to end up in such a conversation again. So it is definitely a sort of trauma that she experienced.
Right.
And then it was about what really was the trigger that made her go into that mode of being so emotional, even though it was a small thing.
Right.
And when we go deeper, like whether it's PCC or MCC level, it goes into her own value system, how she felt that it's a small role. Why are we spending so much time discussing whether this person should get promoted? Right? So that was one thing that she was facing. But at the same time, she's also looking at, like, why is it that she blamed herself for not being able to impact the leader?
Right.
Not being able to influence. So there were a few things at play, and it took like sitting with her and looking at the edges that she was facing, looking into it, that helped her to actually process and progress forward.
Nice.
So that is the kind of work that we are talking about when it comes to a person. That even with corporate coaching, these are issues that might come up as well. A person wanting to work on gravitas, but then realizing that they lost composure, and then there is something behind that. There's definitely a past trauma that creates that outsized reaction. And then it's just about them having that awareness so that they can separate without necessarily going back into the trauma to try to process it, which is not the job of coaching. But what we can at least do is to bring awareness so that there's some lesson that they can take from there, or even know what was happening and having that awareness to separate it. Yeah.
We often tend to project, the world we wish to see onto somebody else, onto the leader of the organization itself.
Yep.
Expecting them to be the one that create the world. But instead, I think we need to start owning our power that we can make this shift every moment of our life.
Yep.
And instead of marginalizing a certain type of experiences that we have, and to really explore where in our life are we not owning our true power.
Yes. So in the case of this leader, I mean, you rightly said that in the case of this leader, she thinks that, if I say all these things, the other leader should be convinced. But then again, it's a matter of we are seeing different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
The leader's value is this way. Me as a, human resource leader, my values are a different way.
Right.
So how do we connect at the level where I can convince this person of this benefit that is shared,
Right.
versus just me versus you?
Right.
So it goes back to what you were sharing about the elephant earlier on, like how we sometimes are so fixated in our own perspective, and what does it take for you as a coach to help the client or the coachee see those other perspectives so that they can see other ways of navigating to influence and to build gravitas instead of the same old way that they're used to, and feeling disappointed because they couldn't move the needle. Yeah. So that's one aspect. What else? And of course, when it comes to how you're not listening, there's also this thing around some people, when they're listening to their client, their mind space goes elsewhere, right? They might be thinking about the next thing that they need to do after the session, or it could even be like this conversation they're having with the coachee actually reminds them of something else that they get distracted by, right? So as a coach, in terms of your inner architecture, you want to understand what draws you away from being with the coachee so that you can begin to work on that, build that separation and move forward. So that's the listening aspect. Other levels of spillover would include rank and power dynamics between you and the coachee. Like, traditionally we always say that the coach and coachee relationship is a equal and balanced one, right?
That's why it's a partnership.
It's a partnership. It's 50-50.
Right.
Right. But the question is, how true does that hold?
What do you mean by how true does that hold?
Because like when a coach comes to the table, to some degree, the coachee will look up to the coach. Because that is the dynamic of how they mostly come into the session, that they feel that there's a value add, there's something that they can be guided or learn from.
That's more like a mentoring thing.
Yes. Even though they may not come from
That's
their
right.
lived-in experience.
That's
But then the whole thing around
Power
the power
rank
that-
dynamic.
correct.
As a coach, I will know better than you. That's the underlying conversation that's running undercurrent in the person's mind space itself.
Correct. And the whole thing around, you should know that's why I hired you.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
naturally there's a bit of that giving of that power away. And how do we as coaches then bring back that balance of power
Right.
dynamics?
Right. So I think it's really about bringing back that whole equal partnership and being conscious, aware that there's a rank. As a coach yourself, you're holding a rank. And if you can be aware of that, I think you will be able to equalize the relationship more harmoniously. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing, but it's really being able to be present, paying attention, listening, watching for feedback signals. Just that alone give you an understanding of the position. And in fact, the outcome of the coaching session will have really been determined in the first 12 minutes of the encounter itself. So I think too many people underestimate their level of awareness, that they think awareness comes from the mind. It is not. Whether we are aware of it or not, awareness runs. Are we aware that we are aware? And if we can be aware that we are aware, then we'll be able to pay attention to all the feedbacks and the subtleties and the nuances from the client itself. And rank and power, there's a saying, right? Power makes the world go round. And if we are not conscious of it, sometimes we can hold harm and damage onto another person without realizing we just did that, just by us not being conscious of it. And the people who tend to have a lot of rank and power, they tend to be unconscious about the rank and power they hold. So they don't realize that they hurt another person. Whereas the people who feel more marginalized, who have lesser rank and power, because this is a whole equation around more than or less than, they will start acting in a way of trying to get even to equalize the field. So in any relationship, which we'll cover this more in the relationship segment itself, but to give a whole brief understanding itself, is this. We need to be aware of the existence of ranks and power. We need to understand that as a coach itself, you need to even be more mindful about ranks and power. And if we can do that, we can already disarm many conflicts and disarm any potential risk of failures in a coaching session. So it really boils down to awareness, right? It also boils down to our experiences, ability to handle certain things. How come we feel something before we know something is going to happen? That familiarity itself. So remember, guys, you're going to clock your hours.
Yes, because the more you do that, you can then, be able to tune into all these aspects, right? You're already familiar with whatever coaching models or the process and how you want to run it. And so you can set that aside and instead focus more on how do I sense and tune in to what's happening in the field, what's happening between me and the coachee, that whole relational and field awareness that actually gives you more to play with the coachee, right? So then this is part of the meta communication module that you would actually learn, and that will be something that you will use to go beyond the cognitive level of coaching. Because to be honest, cognitive coaching falls under the associate certified coach kind of level. As a PCC or MCC, you want to impact at a bigger and deeper level, you need to be able to use other senses that you have beyond just cognitive to be able to impact at a larger level. So, we've been talking for a while around the different aspects of the inner architecture of a person, whether it's your client or whether it's you as a coach, and at the same time, what kind of impact it has when you don't take care of your inner world, right? And, when we come back to this whole thing, this topic really is down to your coach self. So what does that mean? When you come in as a coach, you are bringing who you are in. But at the same time, you're also trying to establish this coach self who is somewhat different from who you are. So maybe let's talk a little bit about why that is important. Like, what is this idea of a coach self? So I would say that this whole idea of a coach self is how you uphold yourself when you are interacting with the coachee. You might be somebody with a monkey mind, but then can you tame your monkey mind to be fully there with the coachee? The answer is yes. And the question is, how much do you want that? So who you are right now as a person, you have your own challenges in life. You have your own weaknesses that you feel doesn't support you if you were to go into a coaching session. But that doesn't mean that you bring that part of you into the coaching when it doesn't forward the client. But instead, what is this aspirational self that you can develop and step into, embodying and being, that you can bring into a coaching session to interact with a coachee, such that, it allows them to feel like they feel seen, they feel that you're present with them, and it allows them to show up fully. And that's why a coach self is important. And so the development of this coach self actually essentially is about you building your gravitas as a coach, right? It's almost like the more you can work with clients this certain way, give that space, that's how you get to be known as maybe a coach who's direct, a coach who's supportive, encouraging. So these are all elements of what makes your coach self. What is this coach avatar that you are putting out there that makes you feel a certain way? That makes you feel like, if I bring this self to a session, that's where my clients feel like they are seen, and that's what they want to work with, and that's what I'm known for, that people look for me for. So it's a bit of your coach identity that we're talking about here.
Right. And of course, as we shared earlier on, an identity itself fundamentally is a box itself.
Yes.
But what if instead of putting ourselves into a box, pretending to be somebody we are not, that's where what comes in. We get connected to our deepest essence. We get connected to our deepest dreaming.
Yep.
and we are congruent, and we are in alignment with how we act, how we hold ourselves, how we behave, how we conduct, how we coach, and how we develop our effectiveness and efficiencies itself, and also other breakthroughs in areas of life. So, who are you without the client? Who are you as a coach without the client? Who are you as a person without all these titles? Not as a coach, not as a employee or entrepreneur, not as a father to your children, not as a mother to your children, not to a husband or wife, to your spouse. But
This
who
is
are you?
Yeah, this is a prelude to identity crisis coaching.
It is. Because identity crisis happens, right, when the costume that you used to wear no longer fit anymore. Right? So a lot of times we generalize and we mystify a lot of things, but then we don't realize that, hey, we're the master of our reality. How come there's something in me that I'm not knowing? Am I not curious enough to want to find out who am I? What drives me? What matters to me? What are my deepest values? Not the value I tell the whole world on LinkedIn. Because those are marketing shit. Those are costumes that you kind of put together for the world to perceive you in a particular way. But if you take everything away from you, who are you? If you know who you deeply are, you have always a ground to stand on. You don't have to try to chase after something. You can be the thing.
Yep.
Maybe your essence is grace. Maybe your essence is beauty. Maybe your essence is love. Maybe your essence is courage. And that essence, as you work on yourself, you start developing that whole interconnectedness and intra-connectedness, to your deepest essence and to your deepest value. It starts showing up in everything that you do and you touch. Whether it's in coaching, whether it's in your leadership, whether it's in facilitating, whether it's in touching people's life. It just show up. So one quickest way is this. Remember moments in your life where you were really excited. Remember moments in your life where you got so excited working on something or having a deep conversation and then time just suddenly flew by. Time no longer exists in that realm. When was that moment for you? And what was it like for you? What was the value that you connected yourself to? What did you realize from that conversation? Some people call it passion. Some people call it a value system. They are all right. So, how do we feel? And if we were to allow ourselves to explore our value system, what keeps us awake every single day? Where are our energies dedicated to? So I think all these things help us really to start our inner work journey to find out our deepest essence. Our deepest essence are not the values we put ourselves out there. It's the things that we do, and while we are doing it, we lose ourselves in the process of it. And we felt so free. We felt like we are one with the world. So in short, that is essence, the oneness that we feel.
So that immersion into something
That's right.
so deep that...
That's right. And if you're connected to that, you're plugged into that whole circuit of yours, then you don't have to be as a coach. You just need to be yourself.
Yep. Which means that at some point, actually, the whole idea of who you are and your coach self actually are one and the same.
That's right. Some people want to help people, that's why they learn coaching, but they never really take a moment to take a step back to ask themselves, why do I want to help people? Why do I want to make a difference with them? Where does it stem from? What kind of interpersonal and intrapersonal and transpersonal relationships that led to those moments of our life? And I think we're too quick to judge it or to label it because everybody is doing so I should be doing it. But I think we need to be really deeply honest with our deepest ethics and our deepest value system and essence. What are our non-negotiables? Because our non-negotiables give us an indicator of our deepest value.
So this is all like value and essence, sort of who you're being, and actually that is also what defines you, what you put out there. And
But you
also,
see, if I say I want you to define yourself, how do I define myself? You're still again trying to find yourself into a box. What if you are all yet you're none? Right? Some people call that state a state of enlightenment. Some people call that state a state of liberation itself. But imagine you're that free. What kind of value are you really adding into the space of the people that you're touching? They'll automatically just be free. They respond to that whole harmony of energies, right? An essence that's being put out by you. And all because you're living so congruently that even the world can't deny that.
yeah. I think what you are actually in essence saying is, there are a lot of coaches out there, right? All of them position themselves a certain way. But what's going to make a difference is not how you are positioning yourself, because that's just a label or a box. But rather it is the essence that you show up in, the values that you embody in the presence of whoever the client is.
Or in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Not
yes.
just in the coaching session, in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. That people see you and then they get drawn to you, and that's what makes them want you as their coach, or
That's right.
gives you the opportunities that you want in your life.
That's right. And it's not about being wanted, it's really about being a right fit to be able to help somebody. And if it's not a right fit, you need to know that it's important to walk away. It's not about being wanted. Who cares about that? Being wanted, that comes from your childhood, neglect, traumas around it.
It goes back to working on yourself again.
That's right. It goes back to working on yourself. But then that's where it becomes very tricky, right? Most coaches would think that, okay, I have this certificate right now. I don't have to really work on myself.
Yeah.
I'm good enough just because I got MCC. I personally have trained about 6 ICF MCCs at the moment. And there is a reason why they came up to me for deeper inner work training and personal mastery training as well. Just when every time we think that we have arrived at the pinnacle of one mountain, realize that there's always a higher mountain. There's always a higher mountain to climb.
Yep.
So the real question is, where do my journey begins?
Yes.
Where do my path lead me to? And when you walk your path, the path disappears. Because you're in it.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, I would say that I'm one of those who definitely has had to do a lot of work on myself, even while I have coached many clients. Right, because without doing that work on myself, I don't think it makes me worthy to be able to work with others, given that...
Not so much around worthiness, but it gives you a lot of range, a lot of depth.
Yes.
In terms of how you can help a person, because you have walked the walk, you have also walked the talk.
Yes.
You have done your work. And because of that, you can be a greater embodiment for miracles to happen.
Yes, and actually that's also where you inspire the client.
That's right.
Right, because for a lot of coaches, they train themselves up as a coach to make a living, to be honest. Right, they're just there to have clients, and then they just want a flexible lifestyle. But the thing is, you want to ask yourself, like, okay, they need to ask themselves, why are they doing this?
Right.
But then when you look at that, then you could ask yourself, like, what is it for you? Why are you doing this? And does that make any meaning or impact for you in your life?
That's right. So there are coaches and there are coaches.
Yes.
There are facilitators, there are facilitators.
Yes.
And you're going to pick the side or both that really call to you. And the standards that you demand of yourself will be a reflection of how much the client will do their work, follow through what they say they're going to do, live up to their standards too.
Yep. And if you are the one watching this video and that you are part of the Coaching Accelerator program, then we believe that you are this level of coach who's looking for that level of standards and impact that you want to make.
And that's why, we train you in an accelerator way that is not really accessible out there. And simply because we understand the framework of training and being able to put together something to add the depth and the quality of what a person can do in coaching itself. So coaching itself is not just a technique or tool that people use for survival, but it's a way and a gateway for people to find deeper fulfillment and freedom in their life.
Yep.
And we hope that you enjoy this conversation. And this is our first episode on the inner world architecture.
Yes, the inner architecture of a coach. So after watching this video, reflect into the different aspects that we've covered, right? That could possibly come in your way of being really there to show up with your coachee, and think about how you like to develop yourself from there.
think a little bit about what you would like to work on, whether do you need a therapist, a coach or counselor or facilitator, or inner work teacher yourself to do some work on some of the parts that's coming up that you're resonating to. Even the things that you don't feel resonate to, you feel numb about it, that's something to look into as well.
Yes.
Even the things that you feel repulsed by. So don't just watch for positive sickness. And I think we live in a world where positivity is overrated itself.
Yep.
You want to focus on things that brings up feedbacks and signal, and the negative feedback and signal is still a feedback and signal, and it has many value to it.
Yes, exactly.
They all show you different parts of yourself. So let's stop marginalizing ourselves and let's start doing the real work now.
Agree. We'll see you in the next video.
Okay.